Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. Hey, warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got a great podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets, taking a look at this wonderful game that we all know and love of college basketball. We're going to be chatting with him about what he's noticed from the first little bit of conference play that we've been seeing, what he saw last week in college basketball, sort of the teams that he's going to be looking to bet and fade moving forward, and what we make out of so many favorites being able to get the job done in ranked games over the last few days, and just how meaningful home court advantage is. We'll take a look at a few games for Monday with him as well, so we are going to be chatting about that and so much more in the second segment. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @JD_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. Then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a great day of college basketball on Sunday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Indiana gets the job done against Penn State. This by kind of 77-71. This game played at the Palestra, and for Penn State, the Palestra did not treat them very kindly. They go 3 of 21 from three-point range, so they actually win the turnover battle 14-10, but lost the rebound battle 39-33. Umar Ballo had himself a nice game, 25 points, 13 rebounds. Indiana was able to do a solid job at the line as well, 16 of 22 at the charity stripe, while Indiana, they go just 10 of 17 at the free throw line. Did a solid job being able to generate turnovers. Yannick Niederhauser had a pair of blocks as well, but nothing doing for Penn State on this day, but a lot doing for Purdue. A Purdue team has been a little bit wobbly against the spread this far this season, but they excel. They get the job done against Northwestern by a count of 79-61. As for Purdue, they continue to shoot really well from three-point range. 8 of 20 from distance. Braden Smith, stuff to the stat sheet, did have 5 turnovers in this game, but 22 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. Meanwhile, for Northwestern, Brooks Barnhizer, he does throw in there 11 points. So it was actually man off the bench, Angelo Chiaravino, hopefully I said that correctly, who had been averaging 3.5 points per contest, who had 19 and kept Northwestern as lively as he could, but just not enough there. And then this team has been very good to the over, dating all the way back to last year. Illinois, they play another over, and they get the job done against Washington. This by a count of 81-77 for this Illinois unit. Kasparas Jakunauskas, another really nice game out of him as he was able to hit a layup in the closing seconds that really put this game out of reach and allowed this team to be able to get the job done. He once again stuffs the stat sheet as he's able to give you in this one 18 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, and you were able to get 17 points out of Trey White as well. He's been coming on relatively strong. And great Osibor, well, he was not so great in this game. He only had 9 points. Guy that was really able to step up, DJ Davis off the bench, 7 of 14 from 3, 31 points. Only reason why Washington was competitive in this game is Washington does win the turnover battle 13-10, but they lose the rebound battle 43-30. So a little bit of an issue there. And when it comes to taking a look at teams that have been solid to the over, Maryland has been as well. 9 overs to 6 unders for them thus far this season. They do lose to Oregon, this by a count of 83-79. They did close in a lot of places as a 4.5-point underdog, so they do cover that line. But for this Oregon team, they go 12 of 28 from three-point range, including Jackson Shellstead being able to give you a 5 of 5 three-point shooting burner, 23 points, 5 rebounds. For Oregon, they win the turnover battle 10-9. They actually win the rebound battle as well, 32-30, as you did have Derek Queen chip in there, 17 points, 5 rebounds. But for Maryland, they go 9 of 21 from three-point range, but allowing Shellstead to be able to pop and make all those threes, that was very much costly to them. Memphis, they do get the win on Sunday, but they do not get the cover against North Texas. The Mean Green able to hold in there, this by a count of 68-64. As it's been a Memphis team that has been very interesting with regards to their totals all season long now, 8 overs to 7 unders, and for North Texas, they've only had 1 more under than overs, just because their totals are being set so low right now. But for Memphis, they go 5 of 13 from three-point range with PJ Haggerty, 3 of 3 from the outside, 27 points, for this North Texas unit, you did have Mule Sissoko chip in their 17 points, 8 rebounds for North Texas. They win the rebound battle 30-21. They actually lose the turnover battle 16-15, but Memphis shooting just a little bit better from 3 and 15 of 21 at the free throw line. That allows them to get the job done. North Texas just 4 of 18 from 3-point range, and your top under team in all of college basketball played yet another under, and that would be Kansas. Kansas has played just one of their games to the over thus far this season. It's been rather remarkable as they absolutely blow out Central Florida 99-48 the final, and they are now, Kansas is 12 unders to 1 over thus far this season. They go 9 of 23 from 3-point range. Central Florida shot 20.6% from the floor. Keyshawn Hall chips in there 12 points, and you really didn't get much out of anyone else. Hunter Dickinson, 27 points, 9 rebounds, 3 blocks. He was able to go to work, and he was able to dominate. A team that did not dominate on this day was UConn. The second half was great for them as UConn does get down in this game by double figures. They were trailing at one point by as many as 14, but they persevere, and they were actually up 12 in this game with about 2 minutes remaining before Providence made a big giant bonsai charge. UConn very nearly covered the 14.5, so they were down by 14 points, and then they lead by 12 points in the same half, 87-84 the final is for UConn, 6 of 13 from 3, and with these high scores, you didn't have a lot of 3-point shooting as you had for Providence, them go 4 of 13 from 3-point range, but Jerron Pierre was able to chip in there, 24 points, and then on the UConn side of things, you're able to get 19 points out of Hassan Diarra. He throws in there 8 assists, 3 turnovers for UConn. They win the turnover battle 10-7. They actually lose a rebound battle 34-22 as for Providence, you were able to have down the 9 rebounds out of Oswin Irasumswe. Hopefully I said that correctly. I'm sure that I did not, so I apologize, but we gave it our best effort there, and then you always get some MACtion, MAAC action as you're seeing a lot of these teams be rather, shall we say, interesting against the spread, to say the least. Canisius, they're just continuing to not cover numbers, and they're continuing to give you just a sad performance in general. They lose the Sacred Heart by a count of 99-82. They are now 5-9 against the spread, and Riders 4-10 against the spread. They lose at home to Manhattan by a count of 80-79, and Manhattan has really been one of your best over teams in all of college basketball. Manhattan in this one closed as a very slim 1.5 point underdog, but now for Manhattan, they are 11-1 to the over thus far this season as Shaquille Bender was able to throw in their 18 points. Manhattan just been on a really nice burner run. Your top team against the spread in this conference, though, is actually Mount St. Mary's, 10-3 against the spread. They take down Niagara by a count of 68-62 as for the Mount, they go 9 of 19 from 3-point range. They win the turnover battle as well, 19-18. Sloppy game. Niagara actually wins the rebound battle 37-27, but not enough to persevere in this one, so that was a fascination. And Siena entered in the day 9-5 against the spread. They leave 9-6 against the spread. Iona 74-73 winners. I personally was on Siena in this one, so a little bit salty there. The fact that Siena had 25 turnovers in this game and Iona had 24 turnovers. One of the sloppiest games that you're going to find, but Iona won the battle on the glass 37-26, despite the fact that he had 20 points out of Brandon Coyle. It was Iona being able to get the job done as their bench actually outscored their starters. You didn't have a single starter for this Iona team score north of 9 points. Meanwhile, you had 3 players off the bench give you at least 11 points for Iona. So that was an interesting one. Additionally, Illinois State continues to be a juggernaut against the spread. They are now 10-3 against the spread. They absolutely take it to Southern Illinois on Sunday. This by a count of 85-54. As for Southern Illinois, they could not splash it in there from 3-point range. 4 of 20 on that count. And for Illinois State, 13 out of 28 from distance. They got 17 points off the bench from Jack Daughtry, who was able to make 5 threes off the bench. Jack Kinzinger, he was able to supply the team with 17 points. The team did have 17 turnovers in this game, but won that rebound battle 38-26, so they were more than able to get the job done. And Drake, after such a hot start to the season, now back-to-back losses for them, they do fall at home to Murray State. This by kind of 66-59 for the Drake. They won the turnover battle 15-8. They lost the rebound battle of 29-21 as big reason why Murray State got the job done. Terrence Harcum, 20 points, goes 4 of 7 from 3. Murray State, 7 of 15 as a whole. Drake, they go 4 of 14 from 3-point range, and then a little bit out there in the NEC as well. Long Island has been pretty solid against the spread team for Chicago State. They got their first outright win a few days ago, and they scored 8 points in the final 16 minutes and 14 seconds in this game. 53-39 the final, as Long Island has actually been relatively good with regards to providing you to the under, as well as they did a nice job putting the clamps down on Chicago State. For Chicago State, they lose the turnover battle 15-10. They lose the rebound battle as well, so a little bit less than savory out there, and the NEC has actually been known for unders over the last few seasons. You had some of the best under teams in the country, with Wagner being chief among them. They have only played one over thus far this season. They played another under against Fairleigh Dickinson. Fairleigh Dickinson 71-59 winners on the road against Wagner. This was a stroll that closed more around about 131.5, and for Wagner, they just have not been able to find too much of anything whatsoever. 3 of 18 from three-point range. They took 70 field goal attempts in this game, and they really couldn't do many of them. So that was a little bit less than tremendous. And Central Connecticut, now 4 overs and 9 unders for them, but they've also been very good against the spread. They get the win. They get the cover against Merciers. This by a count of 62-50, as against the spread, they've been one of your better mid-major teams in all of college basketball. Central Connecticut now sits 10-3 against the spread. Fairleigh Dickinson, by the way, is now 11-2 against the spread themselves. As for Central Connecticut, they owe Merciers to a 19-55 shooting performance. For Central Connecticut, also won that rebound battle 39-29. So we had some fun in college basketball on Sunday, and if you're looking trend-wise at what we are getting, it's been a little bit of an overwhelming season thus far, but we have really seen the unders start to click here in the last 7 days. Last 7 days, we've seen the under rate at about 53.5%, 167 unders to 146 overs. Meanwhile, the underdogs, who have been doing so well this year, starting to dry up a little bit. Favorites 167, 146, and 6 against the spread. Now, overall for the season, underdogs still having themselves a very nice year, as underdogs sitting at 50.8%, 1,211, 1,174, and 36 against the spread. Meanwhile, overs have a slim lead on unders, 1,195 overs to 1,189 unders. So that's what we're seeing right now in college basketball, and that's what we all got on Sunday. Now let's take a look at some of the trends that we want to be taking a look at in terms of college basketball, some of the angles that our good friend Rob Donaldson is digging up, and so much more. That's on the flip side right here on Coach Good Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Houston Family Podcast. And we're back to lovely Las Vegas for Coach Good Seats with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Houston Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man, as we do have Rob Donaldson aboard. He does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets, taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. I know that he's got his finger on the pulse of a little bit of everything, and you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at RobDFB altogether. And Rob, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Greg. It is always a good time to hop on here, and we just had our first kind of solo college basketball Saturday. A lot of different takeaways, and now we're into conference play. It really is like we're hitting that, we brought it up a number of times, but that second or third chapter of the college basketball season now.
Yep, and we brought it into the chapter of days where on Sundays we don't have a game that starts after 2 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, which that's something that they need to change. I'm sorry, but that's absolutely ridiculous. Say you have 137 college basketball games on Saturday, and on Sunday your latest game starts at 2 o'clock p.m. Pacific time. But that said, in terms of what we did see on Saturday, was there any big takeaways? Because I thought that it was really interesting that in games involving ranked teams, the favorites just really reigned supreme there. Meanwhile, it felt like more in those mid-major games, that's where the underdogs were really barking.
Yeah, especially with a lot of these, ranked matchups that we even saw with Alabama and Oklahoma, Iowa State, Baylor, Tennessee, Arkansas. It was like the first one who can win by 20 is going to win the game. Now, we got a great one with Kentucky and Florida, which I really did think was going to be a great ball game. But yeah, to your point, a lot of blowouts. And I think that just kind of speaks to going on the road for the first time in a true road conference matchup environment. It's a lot different than, playing these neutral sites early on in the season when everybody's just trying to get their feet wet.
Yep, it certainly is interesting, and I thought that it was fascinating what we did see in the SEC, because I do think that there's a clear hierarchy, even though all these teams did really well outside the conference. So you had all 16 teams be able to get 10-plus wins, but I do feel like the haves and the have-nots sort of separated themselves. And I take a look at Tennessee, Auburn, those two teams being a little bit of a cut above everyone else right now.
Yeah, I would say there's definitely that distinct tier right now, and I would even throw Florida and Kentucky in that mix of Auburn and Tennessee. And absolutely, and I feel like that's one of those games that, yeah, Kentucky won and they had that home edge, but Florida didn't go out there and embarrass themselves whatsoever. And even in those other games with Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Vanderbilt, out of just complete nowhere, Mark Byington vying for Coach of the Year at this point. We've been talking about it all year, but the SEC is loaded, and they have absolutely every right to get as many teams as they want in the field as they possibly could, in my opinion.
Absolutely. As Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And what do we make out of some of these teams that maybe were really good outside the conference, but maybe they felt like a little bit of paper tigers? Like, I know that they took a loss or two outside the conference, but we saw Cincinnati go down to Arizona, one of those SEC teams in Oklahoma. Though they entered into conference play undefeated, it felt like that was a paper tiger as well. I think that those could be some of the big fades moving forward. These teams that they were the benefits of, shall we say, some variance in the case of Oklahoma in a lot of those games, and in the case of Cincinnati, a team that really beat up on a lesser schedule.
Yeah, and even to your point of, some of these undefeated records are destined to go bye-bye. There's also that kind of inherent notion that, too, if you are carrying in an undefeated billing in any matchup where you're undefeated in, we're sports bettors. There's a spread for a reason. It's a great equalizer. And sometimes with these undefeated teams on the other side of a spread, say Alabama laying 12.5 against undefeated Oklahoma, I feel like that kind of serves as a very clear indictment. And, even coming up, you look at Tennessee, as an impressive as they are team, as good as I think they'll be the rest of the season, with the fact that they're undefeated and the fact that these lines are going to be as inflated as they are because of that, I think there's going to be a lot of value in fading a team like Tennessee as well.
Yep, I think that is going to be really interesting to take note of, because Tennessee, certainly a great defensive team, but I do feel like their offensive numbers might have been a little bit warped by what we saw in non-conference play as well. And I think that just the entirety of SEC play is going to be relatively solid for unders, because typically we've seen in past years the SEC have a lot of overs within the conference, but I feel like there's a lot of good defensive teams, and there's a lot of teams that are rock solid on offense, but it just did really feel like, aside from that Florida versus Kentucky game, where obviously both teams get to 100 points, that the defense was winning out over the offense in all of those other games.
And I do feel like in the early going, especially when you add in these road environments for the first time, and obviously as the season goes on, you're going to get used to those road environments and you're going to perform a lot better on the road. But initially there, what I think kind of happens is defense does kind of win out. I mean, Texas Tech against Utah, I feel like was a clear indictment of that. It's just one of those things where Utah is a very jump shot oriented team. Texas Tech obviously has the Grant McCasland kind of in your face style of defense, and one team blew out the other, and it wasn't the home team, and it wasn't the team playing in the elevation that should suit them. So yeah, to your point, I think defense did reign supreme here on Saturday number 1, or Big Saturday number 1. And I think it is going to be the same way for a couple Saturdays moving forward.
Yep, absolutely. As Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Best, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And what else I think has been very intriguing is we've now seen a few games with regards to the Big Ten, and really feels like the overs are starting to win out. We saw Wisconsin score north of 110 points a few days ago against Iowa. We've seen this Illinois team just come out of the gates absolutely blistering. And how much do you think that it is that the Big Ten is looking itself in the mirror and saying, we have to change what it's done the last several years of which we have not won the national title, and they're really prioritizing offense right now?
Well, what I'll say about the Big Ten and just the mishmash of so many teams in this conference, and I do mean so many teams because there are just more and more getting added every single year, it feels like. And there are so many different styles when you have that kind of range, especially when you kind of speak to the geography of where these teams are located. And Iowa has always been Iowa. They've never changed their style. They're going to be offensive heavy. To your point, you brought up Illinois. That's another team that's always been offensive heavy. But there are some teams in this conference that I think are predicated on winning with defense and kind of controlling the ball. A Purdue or, maybe a Penn State, for example. And, Wisconsin's normally that kind of team, but when a team like Iowa isn't playing defense, you can put up 116 points and not blink an eye. And I think that's kind of the unique factor of the Big Ten is, there's going to be a lot of variance in this conference because of that distinct difference in styles. And sometimes those jump shots travel on the road and your team looks like they're going to break everything open and steal the conference away. But another time you fall flat like Iowa did on Friday in Madison against Wisconsin. And all of a sudden, fingers are getting pointed and everything looks like a disaster.
Yeah, it certainly did look like a disaster for a few Big Ten teams over the last few days. Oregon in that game against Illinois was less than savory. Iowa was as well. And now that leads into a Monday where the marquee games are involving the Big Ten. And you want to talk about a disaster. Minnesota covered their first game of the year against Oral Roberts. Since then, they have went 0-11-2 against the spread, and they're a 5-point underdog at home against Ohio State. What do you make out of this? Because this Minnesota team, typically they're really good at the barn. Typically they provide a little bit of value at home. But even at home, they haven't been able to cover numbers against an Ohio State team. And I'm liking what I'm seeing out of them.
And didn't Minnesota go like 15-0 to start the season last year against the spread?
That's hilarious, yeah.
Everybody's darling was Minnesota last year. And you got to wonder how much of a market correction potentially it was on Minnesota in the offseason. But what I think it kind of speaks even more so to is that although people were really excited about the trajectory of Ben Johnson and his tenure at Minnesota, he's had to deal with a lot of different things. A lot of players transferring out of the program. And also he had to deal with, players not really wanting to transfer in and not really kind of doing well at the high school recruiting level. And now they're kind of paying the ramifications of that. And especially when you're adding in Oregon, USC, a new lifeblood at Michigan, and an uprising Nebraska team, and UCLA, they're kind of falling even further down the pecking order in the Big Ten, and I feel like that kind of says all you need to know about where this Minnesota program is at right now.
Yeah, and Tyler Cochran not getting out there on the floor this season has been hurting them quite a bit. It's been a big, giant issue. You've got Dawson Garcia, and you've got Dawson Garcia, and you've got Dawson Garcia right now for Minnesota, and that's about it. So a little bit less than tremendous there. And then I do want to highlight this game as well because, Rob, we were just talking about that Wisconsin versus Iowa game from a few days ago, but now they go on the road. Wisconsin does to play against a Rutgers team that, as we know at the rack, they're always feisty. And being someone from the great state of Wisconsin, I can tell you that this has been their house of horrors over the last few years. Right now for Wisconsin, they're 1.5-point favorites. What do we make out of this matchup? Because for as good as Wisconsin looked a few days ago, I think that this is going to be a tough road trip for them.
And if there's any two conferences in the entire, nation that kind of define home court advantage, it's the Big Ten, it's the Big 12. And when you're going into the rack, no matter who you are, you could be, an undefeated UCLA, undefeated Michigan State. You could be one of the best looking teams up to this point, but there's a great neutralizer when it comes to a home court environment and a team with their backs a little bit against the ropes in Rutgers. And obviously we just talked about the Wisconsin great game. I kind of like betting against teams coming off a magical, almost overly outstanding performance like that one game out. And for that reason, I think that you kind of alluded to it, but I'm going to be betting pretty heavy on Rutgers here on Monday.
Yep, I do think that Rutgers is going to be able to find a way to get the job done. Myself, as a man that always gets the job done, Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Soups. And Rob, I do want to get your thoughts as well as to some of these smaller conference games as well. How are you going to be playing this Monday where we've got a lot of self-load action, the MEAC, the SWAC? Because I do think that some of the better edges that we find in college basketball can come from some of these smaller conference games.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I've really loved, honestly, betting on the SWAC on Mondays and the MEAC on Mondays as well, and, the Southland has always been here for us as well on these Mondays, and for that reason, when you're kind of looking across the board, I think there's a number of different leagues that provide different sort of betting angles, but I feel like the Southland is more traditional to the style of, if you like betting on high majors, that's a conference that I think you can latch onto and then really figure out fast where the pecking order lies. And when you're looking at the slates and you're seeing Texas A&M Corpus Christi only laying 9.5 as it stands right now, that's a bet that I really, really like. And then you're also looking at, a team like McNeese only laying 10.5. I feel like that's an indictment against McNeese, believe it or not, because Northwestern State has a pretty decent squad this year, and so I do feel like that's worth a stab there with the 10.5 points in Northwestern State.
And Northwestern State has really been slowing down their tempo as well. They're well outside the top 320 in terms of total possessions per game. McNeese has been playing relatively slow and control, and we did see McNeese really run through the Southland last season, so that's going to be an interesting rubber meets the road sort of game. And have there been any other edges that you've been looking at in college basketball? It doesn't have to necessarily be anything for Monday or anything like that, but has there been anything that you've been finding the last few weeks that has just been working really well for you?
Well, there's definitely one angle, and this is an angle that I've been using for years and years, but fade the glossy looking record if a line just kind of looks too, I guess, suspicious, right? You have a team with 11 wins or 11-2 or 12-3, and they're playing a 5-10 team, and it's a pick 'em. I just feel like betting on the team with the worst looking record, sometimes you just gotta plug your nose and dive in and just make sure that you're, fully coherent of doing so, because I honestly feel like that angle has been very, very profitable. And right now, before conference play has started or in the early goings of conference play, is really when that angle is most viable, because eventually, the teams are going to kind of come out in the wash of, hey, wins and losses are going to be more truly representative of how good a team is. We've talked about different angles all throughout the year. That's definitely one of my favorite ones this time of year.
Yeah, it is a really good angle to be taking, and these teams, they sometimes get a little bit too hyped up. The national media is like, oh, this team is so great and everything like that, which is why a lot of people think that when the bookmakers don't give these teams respect, it's a, and I air quotes here, trap line, but in reality, the bookmakers, they're utilizing power rankings. They're not utilizing the media, the narrative, or the fuddy-duddy AP Top 25 poll to make their rankings, and a man that ranks towards the top of our guest list, that is always you, Rob, because you do such a tremendous job taking a look at this wonderful game of college basketball, being able to decipher it all 12 months out of the year. Let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, hi, Greg. Always appreciate you having me on. And for those who want to follow my bets on a daily basis, you can do so on Twitter/X at RobDFB, and also on my YouTube channel, just my name, Rob Donaldson. And as always, Greg, really love hopping on and talking ball with you.
Always love having you aboard, Rob. Rob is one of the best in the business, and every single time he joins me, he lends such great insight. So big thanks to Rob Donaldson for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Rob Donaldson, who does such great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights. Did so once again today, so big thanks to Rob for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GDN_D1. Going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games involving the power conferences first, and then the MEAC, the SWAC, the Southland games. If we have any Patriot League games, those are going to be at the bottom. So we do get things started with 881, 882. South Florida is going to be on the road facing off against Wichita State. Wichita State an 8 to an 8.5 point home favorite. Total on this game between 154 to 154.5. Did set my total at a 154.5, so at a 154, that is my buy point on the over. It's a Wichita State team that's been really looking to play up tempo, but just have not been able to find a whole heck of a lot in terms of their three-point shooting. You've had Xavier Bell really be able to go off, give this team 13 plus points per contest, and Justin Hill has been able to do a nice job, be able to dish it out. He's giving you 15 points, 3.5 assists per contest, but team only shoots about 31.5% from three-point range. They should be able to dominate things down low, though. Quincy Ballard, just a giant of the earth that's able to give you 2 blocks, 8 rebounds per game, and then you've been able to get good versatility out of the St. Peter's transfer. And Corey Washington, he's supplying the team with 13 points, 7 boards per contest. They get to go up against a South Florida team that just really hasn't been able to find their bearings all season long. With South Florida, you have to feel for this team. They lose their coach prior to the start of the season after what was a really nice 2023-24 campaign, but one thing that South Florida has been able to do is guard the three-point line. They're a top 50 team in all of college basketball with that regard, but they just really can't guard on the interior. You do have Jemiah Reynolds, who's been able to give you about 7.5 boards, throws in there 11 points per game, but the South Florida team outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And I will say this for South Florida, they've been able to find their offense a little bit more, getting to at least 75 points each of their last 3 games, and has been a South Florida team that has been playing quite a bit up-tempo as well. Really, both of these teams have a philosophy of going up up-tempo, but just the usage and the, shall we say, operation of this has been a little bit suspect, to say the least, as Wichita State currently 36th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. For the South Florida unit, they are right around about 88th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but they do play at a rate of about 2.5 possessions per game more when they are on the road. You've got Jalen Reed, who's been able to knock down 39% of his threes, 12.5 points per contest, and it is a South Florida team that they do shoot as a collective about 34% from the outside, 76% at the free throw line. Brandon Stroud, Kassan Jennings, these guys have been able to combine for about 18 points per contest, but I do think that with Wichita State, they do find a way to be able to get the job done. I do think that South Florida starts to find their sea legs a little bit more. They've been playing a little bit better on defense. They've given up fewer than 70 points in each of their last 3 games ever since that Bethune-Cookman loss, and for Wichita State, they've really been giving it up themselves. They lose that game at home against UMKC. It is a unit that they have now given up at least 74 points in all but 2 out of their last 7 games, so I do think that things go a little bit more up and down in this one. I think that you've got the propensity for some late game fouling. Did set my total 154.5, so here at the 154, I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over and set Wichita State as a 6.5 point favorite, so here at the 8, taking those points as well. 883, 884 on the card. It is Wisconsin on the road against Rutgers, and Rutgers is a 1 to 1.5 point home underdog. Totals between 156 to 157, and did set my total 156. I'm in on the under. Both of these teams at their core have always been relatively slow tempo teams, but we've seen a little bit of reversal for both this season. Wisconsin within the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game. You never see that. Like, Wisconsin is always a bottom 75 team with regards to their pace of play, but they've really sped themselves up, and they've done so without turning the ball over. They shoot 85.5% the free throw line. They only turn the ball over about 9.9 times per game, with John Tonji being your main man with about 18.5 points, 5 boards per contest. They do a nice job of rebounding by committee. Out of your top 5 scores, all but one of them do supply you with at least 4.8 rebounds per game, but I like Rutgers here to be able to get the job done, as this has just been a house of horrors for this Wisconsin team. Even when Frank Kaminsky was on the team and they went to the national title game in 2015, they lost at Rutgers. You've got Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, who have been able to supply a combined 42.5 points per contest. Harper and Bailey are both combined to shoot about 36% from 3-point range. Now the question mark becomes who steps up around them. Jordan Durkock has been very versatile, 2.5 assists, 7 points per contest. You could use a little bit more out of someone like a PJ Hayes, who's only been able to give you about 4 points per contest, but Rutgers keeping things relatively clean with regards to just their overall ball handling, only about 10.5 turnovers per game, and Wisconsin is not a team that is really going to generate a lot of turnovers. They're well outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and it is a Wisconsin defense that has been quite leaky themselves. They have given up at least 74 points in all but one out of their last 5 games, with that lone exception, I believe, being that game that they played against Detroit. And then for this Rutgers team, they themselves leaving something to be desired with that regard. But when it comes to Rutgers, the offense has been pretty constant and it has been pretty consistent for them. They've been able to get to at least 74 points in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that with Rutgers, they just need to find a little bit more down low to be able to be an elixir to Noah Winter, but I do think that someone like a Lathon Somerville down low has a chance to be able to give you some rebounding, be able to guard the rim, and I do think that Wisconsin going to struggle a little bit with their 3-point shooting against a Rutgers team that they have slipped outside the top 85 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I do think that they're going to do just enough to be able to guard the perimeter in this one, to be able to find a way to get the job done. And so a Rutgers team that does a better job of being able to generate turnovers than Wisconsin, so I do think that they have a few more clean possessions in this one as well. Set my line at a 156 with regards to total, and on the under, I do like Rutgers outright on the money line. 885, 886 on the betting board. It is Ohio State, and they're on the road against Minnesota. Minnesota is a home underdog of 5 points, and your total on this game is 137. For Minnesota, they covered their first game of the year against Oral Roberts, and since then they have went 0-11-2 against the spread. I said Ohio State is a 5.5 point favorite. I do think that at some point Minnesota is going to be able to cover a number, but I'm going to be willing to lay it once again, and I'm actually going to be writing up for this game the under. I set my total at a 133.5. Minnesota outside the top 340 in terms of total possessions per game, and Dawson Garcia has been very good for this team. He's supplying them with north of 19 points per contest, throws in their 7 rebounds per game, but what do you have outside of him? It's a Minnesota team that's outside the top 160 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, much of that was without Mike Mitchell in the backcourt, transferred in from Pepperdine. He's really been one of their main facilitators, and he and Lucille Patterson have been able to combine for a little bit over 7 assists per contest, and Mitchell does shoot 42% from 3-point range, and it's much needed. Minnesota right around about 300th in the country with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage at 30%, and though Femi Udakale is able to contribute a lot by way of just like a pair of steals per contest, 1.5 blocks, 3.5 assists per game. He's only giving you 5 points per contest. You need a little bit more there for this Iowa State team. They've been more around about 65th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Have been a little bit sketchy with regards to their defense away from home, but Devin Royal, he should be able to control things down low. This is also an Iowa State team that they're a top 10 team in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They're allowing opponents to shoot less than 28% from the outside. You've got John Mobley along with Bruce Thornton, both shooting north of 44% from three. Think that should regress just a little bit, but Mobley's able to give you 12 points per contest. Thornton, 4.5 assists, right around 17 points per contest. And now you've got Aaron Bradshaw back in the fold as well. Hasn't necessarily been able to ever live up to that top 10 recruiting billing, but I do think that he could be a nice X factor for this team as well. It is a Minnesota team that, with that slow, grimy tempo, I think that they're going to be able to do an okay job of holding in there. But again, I do think that the overall talent level of this team in Ohio State going to be able to win out. And I just think that Ohio State is going to be able to absolutely bludgeon on the glass as well. For Frank Mitchell, he's been able to give you free rebounds for Minnesota. But I mean, this is a Minnesota team that is right now 221st in the country with regards to rebound percentage. Ohio State more around about 127th. Do like Ohio State to be able to get the job done in a lower scoring slug. So my total 133.5. So writing up the under. And I do like Ohio State in this spot. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 887, 888. TCU on the road against Houston. Houston is between an 18.5 to a 19-point favorite. Total on this game between 128 to a 128.5. I did set my total 124.5. You've got a Houston team that they just really bleed the clock. They're once again well outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, and they just do a tremendous job defensively. They are currently number one in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I set my line at 18.5. If you can reach a 19, and I've seen a few 19s out there, that is my buy point on TCU. TCU, a relatively spirited effort over the weekend. Then he went out there, got the job done against Kansas State on their home floor, and for TCU, they've actually been able to do a nice job with regards to their defense. Ever since Frankie Collins has been out of the lineup, they've given up 62 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games, and TCU's really looking to slow things down as they've had Ernest Uday do a nice job down low, being able to supply the team with 9 rebounds, a steal and a half, a block and a half per contest, so good versatility there. Now, with regards to generating turnovers, Frankie Collins was one of the best in terms of steals per game a season ago, so that does hurt them a little bit, but you do have Tarzarian Wade, Vashawn Elouette, pair of guys that give you about 10.5 points per contest. It's a TCU team that shoots at 65% at the free throw line, and against a Houston team that they fell a ton, that's a bit of an issue. Now for Houston, they are shooting 41.5% from three-point range. Do you think that we should see a little bit of regression with that? Out of all the players that have made at least 1 3 this year, you've got all but one player, and that would be Mr. Mercy Miller, who's been able to give you about 4.5 points per contest, and we'll throw out there anyone that's scored less than a point and a half per contest as well, shooting at least 37.8% from three-point range. Milo Suzan, 5 assists, 9 points per contest. He's not quite Jamal Shedd, but he's done a nice job filling that role. Terrence Arnoux has been able to give you 10 points. He shoots 43.5% from 3, and Emmanuel Sharp, 48% from the outside. Joseph Tugler, Jawan Roberts, these guys are doing a really nice job down low. Houston, once again, one of the top teams in all of college basketball with regards to rebound percentage, but TCU also doing a top 75 job in terms of generating turnovers. Houston is a team that they do a nice job of taking care of the ball, but I think that TCU finds a way to generate just a few turnovers. I do think that once you get past 19, that's a point of no return, and 19 plus will take the points with TCU. And then with regards to total, set my total at a 124.5. It's also in on the under. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-639, 306-640. It's Arkansas Pine Bluff on the road against Alabama State, and Alabama State a 15 to 15.5 point favorite. Total on this game, you're going to be finding it between a 163 to a 164. I'm going to write up the over. I set my total at 167. Arkansas Pine Bluff is playing at an absolutely torrid pace right now. They are in the top 20 in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and they are 363rd out of 364 teams in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They've dealt with a little bit of an injury to Christian Moore, but they've gotten him back in the lineup as he's been able to supply the team with 11 points, a little bit north of 5 assists per contest. That certainly helps out this offense. It's a Pine Bluff team that overall is only shooting about 33% from three-point range, and they're still missing their top rebounder as well, as they were able to get some good production early on during the season from Robert Lewis, who was able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. That means that there should be plenty of second and third chances out there for an Alabama State team that legitimately has done a great job of taking care of the ball. They're a top 10 team in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. You've had CJ Hines, Amar Knox, both be able to give you 14.5 points per contest. They combine for darn near 3 steals per contest as well. Alabama State shooting much better from the floor than they have in past years, shooting north of 41.5% from the field, about 34.5% from three-point range, and then you've got TJ Madlock, who does a little bit of everything for the team. That is the coach's son, who's been able to supply the team with 2.5 assists, 5.5 boards, 11 points per contest. So, been loving what I've been seeing out of him. He did miss a few games earlier during the season, but should be all good to go here. So, I do think that you're going to be able to get yourself another nice high-scoring expose, as we saw Alabama State a few days ago against Mississippi Valley State be able to put up a nice 84 spot. So I'm going to be in on the over. I'm going to be writing that up. And with regards to this spread, I did set my line at 13. Arkansas Pine Bluff, they've been able to do a relatively good job. I'll be able to find a little bit more from the outside recently. You do have a few guys that have been able to pop off, be able to give you like 8 to 9 points per contest. You've got Kima Vuga, who comes on over from Monmouth. He's been able to give you about 8 points, giving you a little bit of something down low. And the guy that is impressing me, Dante Sawyer, he's been able to throw in there about 11 points per contest. He doesn't necessarily give you a lot from three-point range, but you've got a 50% three-point shooting percentage out of Quentin Bolton, who's been able to give you 8 points per contest. So, going to be willing to take those points with Arkansas Pine Bluff, and I'm going to be in on this total over. 306-641, 306-642. It is UT Rio Grande Valley on the road against Southeast Louisiana. Southeast Louisiana does find themselves as a underdog in this spot of a 1.5. Total on this game is 145.5, and I did set Southeast Louisiana as a 2.5 point favorite. I do like them outright on the money line. For Southeast Louisiana, they're just a little bit of a better defensive team than UT Rio Grande Valley. Grande Valley starting to be able to generate a few turnovers, and I like the way that this new coaching staff has come in and has really been able to transform this team, as Grande Valley has been a rough team for a very, very long time. But KT Ramey, who was over at DePaul a few seasons ago, he's been able to give you 13.5 points per contest for a team that they shoot about 33% from three. They've cleaned up their act with regards to their turnovers. It's still higher than what you'd like, but about 13 turnovers per contest when you're a Grande Valley team that is a top 50 unit in terms of total possessions per game. Not too bad. 6'8" Hassan Abdul-Hakim has really good versatility with 13.5 points, 7.5 boards, 3 assists. Missed a little bit of time earlier in the season, but he's back. He's given the team 7+ boards in each of the last 4 games, and coming off of a nice 22-point performance a few days ago as well. But this is also a Southeast Louisiana team that has all sorts of versatility with Sam Hines Jr. giving you 15 points, 7 boards, shoots 41.5% from 3-point range. And overall, Southeast Louisiana, they do need to clean up their act with regards to turnovers as well. They're turning the ball over about 14 times per contest, and they're a little bit of a lower tempo team, but they've been able to do a nice job of being able to guard the arc as well. For Southeast Louisiana, top 85 team in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. While this is a bunch in UT Rio Grande Valley that on the road, they've been very good with regards to their 3-point shooting defense as well. Overall, it's 29.5%, rises up to about 31.5% on the road. So I do think that causes things to be a little bit more of a slog in this game. Did set my total at a 144.5. I'm going to be in on this total under. The one real fear that I do have with this UT Rio Grande Valley team is, what are you going to be able to get down low in this game? The team is about 190th in terms of overall rebound percentage. With Southeast Louisiana, you do have someone in Brody Woodbury who's been able to do a nice job giving you about 4.5 boards, 7 points per contest. If you look at the overall rebound percentage for Southeast Louisiana, it's actually a little bit lower than that of UT Rio Grande Valley, but I do like the individual pieces a little bit more. I think that Thomas Tutt could be able to give you a little bit more moving forward than Jakevion Buckley. Way that he's been able to give the team 2 steals, 4 assists, 11.5 points per contest. I do think that Southeast Louisiana forces Grande Valley into a few turnovers. It is a Grande Valley team that has been able to get past the 76-point plateau in each of their last 4 games, but you've got a Southeast Louisiana team that they themselves have been able to do a pretty rock-solid job with their defense as well. Southeast Louisiana has given up fewer than 70 points and now 6 out of their last 8 games. So I do think that you see a slowdown. I'm going to be in on Southeast Louisiana outright on the money line. Made my total 144.5, so I'm also in on this total under as well. 306-643, 306-644. It is Houston Christian. They're going to be on the road against Stephen F. Austin. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin, a 10 to 10.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 128.5. Houston Christian has actually been one of your most profitable teams in all of college basketball. I thought that we would see a little bit of regression here, and I thought that I was setting an aggressive line at 9.5 at the 10. I just have to take the points here with Houston Christian. Like, Houston Christian isn't necessarily impressing me in any form or fashion. It is a bunch that they shoot about 28.5% from 3-point range. They don't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, but they've really slowed down their tempo. They are well inside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. It is a bunch that they do an okay job of being able to generate turnovers as well. And Stephen F. Austin, in terms of your 364 D1 teams in terms of taking care of the ball, entered the weekend at home, 364th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Houston Christian, they've been a little bit up and down with regards to their own scoring, but they've done an okay job of being able to guard the arc. They're about 160th in the country with that regard. Now, Stephen F. Austin, they have been a very good defense. They're in the top 45 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 11th in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. So Julian Mackey going to need to have himself a big game for Houston Christian, 15 points shooting 36% from three-point, and then Elijah Brooks has been able to throw in there about 9 points, 4 boards per contest. I do like what I'm seeing out of him as well, but you don't necessarily have a ton of size outside the about 4.5 to 5 rebounds per game of Peyton Rogers for Houston Christian. On the flip side for Stephen F. Austin, Matt Heyman, he's been able to make some hay as he's been able to give you about 12 points per contest for Stephen F. Austin. Still a very banged up team. They were bringing in a Texas transfer in Chris Johnson that just has not been able to see the floor. But Nana Ati Bawasiko has been very versatile at about 6'9", 7 boards, a block. He's able to shoot about 31% from three-point range. But Stephen F. Austin also in a cover spot. They shoot 58.5% at the free throw line, 25.5% from three-point range. I think that you're looking at another low-scoring, just sad game in general. I set my total at a 125.5. I just don't see where the scoring is coming from in this one. And Stephen F. Austin is now well outside the top 225 in terms of total possessions per game as well. They have really slowed themselves down as traditionally this would be a very up-tempo team this year for Stephen F. Austin, entering into Sunday about 263rd in terms of total possessions per game. So, in on the under, set my total 125.5, and at 10 plus, take the points with Houston Christian. 306-645, 306-646. It is Morgan State playing us to NC Central, and NC Central does find themselves as a road favorite of 3 to 3.5 points. Total on this game is 155 to 155.5, and with NC Central, I did set them as a favorite of 6.5 points. I'm going to be one to lay the number with this NC Central team. It has been all sorts of less than savory for them on defense, to say the least. They are outside the top 240 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're still doing a relatively solid job of being able to guard the three-point line. They hold opponents to shooting about 33% from three-point range, and for this Morgan State team, they are 355th in the country with this regard. Morgan State in the bottom 25 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Just lots of red flags there, and when it comes to this Morgan State unit, it has been very up and down with regards to their offense because they brought in Winston Tabbs from Boston College, and when he's been out there on the floor, he's been great. 15 points, 2.5 assists, not really shooting it well from three-point range. Problem is, he's been all sorts of banged up. Did return in that game against South Carolina State, but he did not look like himself. He had 3 points in about 21 minutes, so that's something that's a little bit concerning, so he should be good to go in this one, but again, I don't think that he's fully 100%. You've got Cameron Hobbs, who's been able to give you 12 points per contest, and it's a Morgan State team that, to their credit, they shoot about 35% from 3 and 50% from the floor, but they also do turn the ball over 14 times per game. And one thing that NC Central has been able to do a relatively okay job of, I'm not going to call them amazing with this regard or anything like that. They're always a team that's able to generate some turnovers, and they need to, because this is a team that is 339th in the country with regards to overall rebound percentage. Morgan State really not a lot better with regards to rebound percentage. They're more around about 246th in the country. For NC Central, you don't have a single guy on the roster that's able to give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. Tammy Edidire has been able to give you about 4.3 rebounds per game, so he's been able to give you a little bit of something down low, but I like what I'm seeing out of the backcourt duo of Keshawn Porter along with Po' Boy King. King has been your main man with 16 points, doesn't really shoot it well from 3, but generates about 8 steal and a half per contest, and Porter shoots 39% from 3-point range, a little bit over 11 points per contest, and they found a nice, shall we say, facilitator in Deontay Johnson. Johnson give you 4.5 assists, 7 points per contest. Again, not shooting it well from 3-point range, but he's given the team a combined 21 assists, 9 steals, and 4 turnovers in the last 2 games. So I think that that's going to be able to elevate NC Central in this game and help them get the job done against a Morgan State team that they very much are looking to play up tempo. And for NC Central, this is typically a little bit more of a moderate tempo team. They've been speeding themselves up quite a bit this year as well. They're more around about 224th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Morgan State, meanwhile, they're just absolutely running it and gunning it this season. They are currently clocking in about 64th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So I do think that you get yourself a nice up and down game. I did set my total at a 158.5, so I'm going to be in on this total over. And with regards to NC Central, willing to lay up to 6 with them. 306-647, 306-648. It is New Orleans, and they play us to Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi is a favorite of 9 points on the road. Total on this game between 150.5 to a 151, and with Corpus Christi, I set them as a favorite of 9.5 points. 9 is the max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. New Orleans entering into this year had ranked in the top 35 in terms of total possessions per game each of the last 4 years, and outside the top 280 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in every one of those seasons, and they are back outside the top 280 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, the tempo, it has not been quite as rambunctious, but still 71st in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and I like what they're getting out of James White, a transfer from UAB and Ole Miss. He's supplying the team with 19 points, 7.5 rebounds per game, and Josh Short has been able to come up big for them as well. He's supplying you with about 10.5 points per game. These two guys combined to shoot 33.5% from three-point range, but outside of MJ Thomas, who's been your top rebounder outside of White with about 7 boards per contest, you're just not really getting a whole lot out of anything else. New Orleans outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, as they shoot 29% from three, about 64% at the free throw line, and this is a Texas A&M Corpus Christi team that is still a top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Last year, Corpus Christi was one of your best three-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball. More country average this year at about 172nd, but this team still has been able to do a pretty rock-solid job on defense recently. They've been able to put the clamps down with 71 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, with that lone exception coming against Houston, which that's pretty forgivable. And for Corpus Christi, they're playing at a pretty up-tempo pace. They've been dealing with some injuries in the backcourt, with Isaac Williams, your main facilitator, being out of the lineup in the month of December, but came back for his first game in over a month against Southeast Louisiana, had 23 points a few days ago, so he's going to be all good to go. Owen Dees has been in and out of the lineup as well. He's been a number 3 wheel for them. He also returned against Southeast Louisiana. He's giving you 10 points per contest and is shooting 45.5% from 3. Now, with Corpus Christi in a cover spot, they do shoot just 62% at the free throw line, but Gary Clark has been able to give you about 7 boards per contest as well, and this is a New Orleans team that I just fear that they're going to get absolutely demolished on the glass. It's not like Corpus Christi has necessarily been an impressive rebounding team at about 227th in all of college basketball, but for New Orleans, 318th with this regard. They just don't really have any sort of perimeter defense. They don't have much defense down low. It's a New Orleans team that they have failed to get past the 64-point plateau in 4 of their last 5 games as well, so I do think the Corpus Christi goes out there, takes it to them in what I think is going to be a very high-scoring game. Set my total 161.5. I'm going to be in on this total over, and with Texas A&M Corpus Christi, I'm going to lay up to 9 with them. 306-649, 306-650. Delaware State is playing host to Norfolk State, and Norfolk State does find themselves as a road favorite of 7 points total on this game. It is 147-147.5, and with Delaware State, I did set them as a underdog of 4 points, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with them. For this Delaware State team, they don't necessarily do one thing great, but they really don't do one thing terribly as well, and this has been a Norfolk State team that has been outside the top 200 towards points allowed on a per possession basis. So, to the credit of Norfolk State, they allow opponents to shoot only about 30.9% from three-point range on the road. That's a top 85 mark in all of college basketball, but for the Delaware State team, they themselves at home are allowing opponents to shoot only about 27.8% from three-point range overall, more around about 220th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. But there's an argument to be made that they've got one of the best players in the conference on their team, as Martez Robinson has been able to supply the team with 17 points, 6.5 boards per contest, and Norfolk State does not have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. Jalen Myers has been that guy with 5 rebounds per game. Jelani Darden last year gave you 5 boards per contest, but he's had a fall-off recently as well. Norfolk State about 267th in the country with regards to rebound percentage. Delaware State just a hair better than that at 255th, but if you look at home rebound percentage, Delaware State has actually been a top 45 team in all of college basketball in that regard. You've got some nice size with Alston Andrews being able to give you about 6'10" size, began his career at Illinois State. He's giving you about 4.5 boards, a little bit over a steal per contest. Kasim Watson throws in there 14 points, 6 boards per game as well. And it's a Delaware State team that overall, they shoot about 35.5% from 3, 72.5% at the free throw line. Ryan Moore Jr. is one of the better mid-major scorers that you're going to find out there, as he's giving you 19.5 points. He and Christian Ings are both shooting north of 50% from three-point range. I do think that there's going to be a little bit of fall with that regard. Sincere McMahon hasn't necessarily given you too much, coming over from Winthrop, only about 6 points per contest, and I do think that Delaware State has the goods to be able to hold in this game. The Norfolk State defense starting to look a little bit better, 70 points or fewer allowed in 4 of their last 5 games. It is a Delaware State offense, though, that has been able to get past 70 in 4 of their last 5 games, so interesting set of circumstances here. Set my line at 4, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Delaware State at home. With regards to the total, set mine at a 144, so I'm also in on this total under. 306-651, 306-652, it is Northwestern St playing us McNeese, and McNeese does find themselves as a favorite of 10 points. Your total on this game, it is between 130.5 to 131, and with McNeese, I did set them as a favorite of 11.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the 10 with McNeese. Certainly has been a little bit of a wobbly start to the season for them, but I still think that this is going to be a team that gets online, and I think that they are going to be dominating within this conference. for McNeese, you've got Sincere Parker, who sincerely has been able to give this team 15 points per contest, and I do think that having down low Christian Schulmate, Joe Charles being able to give you about combined 12.5 rebounds per game, going to be big. McNeese only shooting about 31.5% from three-point range, and defense isn't quite where it was a season ago. Last year, they were a top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're currently outside the top 55 right now, but that said, they should be able to really hike up those numbers with regards to conference play now, because they played a brutal non-conference slate, and we saw it last year within the conference. They just flat out dominated, but Northwestern State is really looking to take the air out of the ball. They're outside the top 325 in terms of total possessions per game. They're not too bad of a rebounding team. They're about 210th in the country with regards to rebound percentage, and they do have Addison Patterson on their side, who's been able to give you about 13 points, 5 boards, good versatility at 6'7", a former top 100 recruit, and then Willie Williams has been able to supply the team with about 6.5 rebounds per game. Still have some question marks with regards to the overall perimeter play, as they've been turning the ball over 12 times per contest despite playing so slowly, and Love Bettis is typically a really good three-point shooter, only about 6.5 points on 29% three-point shooting this season, but John Sanders, who does come over from Coastal Carolina, 11 points, 3 assists, shooting 37.5% from three-point range. That said, he's also had a whopping 14 points in the last 3 games combined, so a little bit of an issue there. I do think that with Northwestern State, they do just get overwhelmed a little bit in this game. Both of these teams are very low-tempo teams, but I do think that McNeese going to be able to execute just enough on offense to be able to get this over. And I do think that with McNeese taking just a tad bit of a setback on defense as well, you're going to be able to get a little bit more scoring in this game, as McNeese has been able to get past the 75-point plateau in each of their 3 games in Southland play thus far. And it's a Northwestern State team then, to their credit, they've been able to get past 66 points in 3 out of their last 4 games. So I think that you get just enough scoring for the over. I'm in on the over, so my total 131.5 and 1 delay up to 11 with McNeese. 3 of 6, 653, 3 of 6, 654. It is East Texas A&M playing us in Nicholls. Nicholls is a 5 to a 5.5 point favorite in your total on this game. It is 142, and with East Texas A&M, I did set them as an underdog of 7.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the 5 with Nicholls. With Nicholls, this has been a team that their overall metrics show that they are outside the top 170 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, but it just feels like a team that's starting to find their bearings in general with this Nicholls team. They have gone out there defensively, and they have given up 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. The lone exception is when they gave up that 100 spot to Gonzaga, but I do like what you're getting in the backcourt out of Brian Ireland along Jamal West. West Jr. is just able to give you a bit of everything. 10 points, 6 boards, block and half per contest. Not really going to pop it from 3 points, but Ireland, 3 assists, and he's done a great job of being able to pair up with Trey English, who is not too much of a scorer with only about 6.5 points per contest, but throws in there 2.5 assists, 1.5 steals per contest. And the Nicholls team is starting to get back to their roots a little bit more. Back in the day, they used to be really good at generating turnovers. Now, pretty much all the turnovers that they generate are steals. They really don't get a lot of, shall we say, dead ball turnovers, but they go up against an East Texas A&M team that is turning the ball over 17.5 times per contest. In terms of turnovers per possession, it's a bottom 8 team on offense in the country. Scooter Williams has been able to give you a little bit under 12 points per contest, throws in there about 2 assists per contest, and Khalika Abdul-Mateen, he's been able to give you a respectable effort on offense as well. A pair of assists, 3.5 boards, 7 points, does shoot in that neighborhood about 32-33% from 3-point range, but you're really bereft of a lot of size down low as well. I thought that they were going to be able to get a little bit more out of the former starter over there at ETSU and Josh Taylor. He's only been able to supply the team with about 4.5 rebounds per game, and as a result, this continues to be a team that's outside the top 250 with regards to our overall rebound percentage. Not that this Nicholls team has been amazing on the glass. They're about 274th in the country, but you've got an East Texas A&M team that is really struggling with that regard, about 294th in all of college basketball as well. It is a team that has been able to generate some turnovers. East Texas A&M, a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but I do think that Nicholls, who's got a pair of point guards in Ireland along Trey English, they should be a buster there with East Texas A&M other than TJ Thomas. Nobody else gives you north of 2 assists per game, and Thomas, not too much of a scoring dynamo, as he's only been able to give you about 4 points per contest, has been very limited with regards to his minutes recently as well, and I do think that as a result, you find Nicholls being able to get the job done on the road. I did set my line at 7.5, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Did set my total at 141.5 as well. This Nicholls team starting to bear down on defense, so going to be on the under to go along with Nicholls slaying that number. 306-655, 306-656. It is Lamar. They play us Incarnate Word. Incarnate Word is a 4 to a 4.5 point underdog. This game is 137, and with Incarnate Word, I did set them as an underdog of 4.5 points. So here at the 4, it's a max I'm willing to lay with Lamar, but I'm going to be willing to lay with Lamar. With Lamar, they've done a really nice job of being able to mix and match with regards to transfer portal. They bring back a few guys from a season ago, Adam Hamilton being one of the main of them, as he's been one of their top rebounders. He's he's been able to supply the team with a little bit over 6 rebounds per game, though. It's actually been Andrew Holyfield who's been your main man down low at 6'10". He's supplying the team right now with nearly 2 blocks, 11.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. And in terms of blocks on a per possession basis, this Lamar team is a top 40 team in the country. And then we got Alexis Marmayoles, who he comes in via the junior college level, and he has been really lighting it up for this team. 16.5 points, shoots 41% from 3-point range. It's not a Lamar team that's necessarily amazing with their offense, but they do shoot 34% from 3-point range, a relatively mid-tempo team that turns the ball over about 12.5 times per contest. You'll gladly take that, and this is a Lamar team that they certainly should be able to win that battle down low. They're a top 185 team with regards to rebound percentage. Incarnate Word, to their credit, they've been able to do a much better job of running good, clean offense. Now, Incarnate Word is well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but for Incarnate Word, when they have been at home, they've actually been one of the best rebound rate teams in all of college basketball. When they hit the road, they're outside the top 240 with that regard, but been able to get in that neighborhood about 6 to 6.5 rebounds and 6.3 points per contest at Jaden Williams. And then you've got the two guys that come in from Ball State that have really been able to transcend the offense, as Jalen Anderson has come in, given the team 13.5 points, 6 assists, shoots 34% from 3-point range, and then Davion Bailey, 18 points on 43% 3-point shooting. Incarnate Word outside the top 270 in terms of total possessions per game, so they're looking to play very efficiently with regards to their offense. And to this Incarnate Word team's credit, they've been able to really up their defense recently. They have given up 70 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games, and if you want to go back a little bit further, this is a team that has given up 72 points or fewer in all of their games ever since Thanksgiving. So they've been able to do a rock solid job of being able to hold up with that regard, but they are still a team that they do a nice job being able to pop it from 3-point range, and they do allow a few teams to be able to get just a few too many looks from 3-point range as well, and that's going to be the key for Lamar. Lamar does need to guard the perimeter well in this game, and for Lamar, they're allowing opponents to shoot 32.4% from 3-point range. That's a top 150 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for Incarnate Word, they're about 296th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. So I do think that you see this Lamar team go out there, find a way to be able to get the job done, and I did set them at a -4.5, so going to be willing to lay up to 4 with Lamar. Did set my total at a 138.5. Right now, seeing that total more around about a 137, 137.5, in on the over, and I'm going to be in on Lamar in this circumstance. 306-657, 306-658. It is Texas Southern. They play us at Grambling, and Grambling does find themselves as a underdog of between 3.5 to 4 points. Total game is 136, and I set Grambling as a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them outright on the money line now. I fully recognize that this is a Texas Southern team that typically they have less than savory results outside the conference, and then in conference they're able to take off. They're right now a bottom 10 team against the spread in all of college basketball, and it just doesn't feel like it's going to be able to get right. For Texas Southern, typically this is a team that they do a really good job down low, and then they leave something to be desired with regards to their perimeter play. But right now for Texas Southern, their rebound percentage is 344th in all of college basketball. And I recognize that these are SWAC teams that are playing a whole bunch of bye games, things like that. And for Grambling, it's not like they've necessarily been the same team down low that they have been in the past. They're about 322nd in the country with that regard, but it just feels like you're getting a little bit of a better effort on the glass side of this Grambling team. And for Grambling, they had a really hot start to the year from 3-point range. They've cooled down a little bit, but you still have some nice versatility on this roster. Antoine Burnett, he's been able to give this team right around about 12.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. I know that he was a little bit banged up towards the back half of the season, and he did miss that game against Prairie View, so you do want to be noting that. But that said, you've also got Contavion Dozer, who's been able to give you 10.5 points. He's been able to give you a little bit over a steal per contest as well. It's a Grambling team that does need to clean up the turnovers. They've been turning the ball over about 14 times per contest, but it's not as if the Texas Southern team has necessarily been running the cleanest offense themselves. They're turning the ball over about 13 times per game. They might have the best overall score in this game, as you get 14 points, 4.5 assists out of Kavion McLean. He's been shooting 39% from 3-point range, but Jalen Jackson Posey, who came in from Stephen F. Austin 2 seasons ago, was a 44% 3-point shooter, 4 points per game on 32% 3-point shooting. That's been a little bit of an issue. You do have someone down low, and Kenny Hunter is able to give you a little bit over a block, 6.5 rebounds per game, but he is the only guy for the Texas Southern team that's giving you north of 4 rebounds per game. And for the Grambling team, each of your top 4 scorers, if you include Burnett, who, again, I think that there's a good chance that he's going to be out of this game, they've all been able to give you at least 4 rebounds per game. PJ Eason has been able to throw in there 4.5 boards. boards, a block per contest as well. This is a Grambling team that in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis certainly does land outside the top 175 with that regard, but Texas Southern approaching 300 with that regard. It's been a Texas Southern team that just really has not been able to find their bearings in general. I do think that Grambling finds a way to be able to get the job done outright on the money line, especially with the way that they've been able to pop it from 3-point range, and that's right now one of the bigger kryptonites for this Texas Southern team as well. Texas Southern is allowing teams to just go hog wild from 3-point range, 310th in the country with that regard at home, allowing opponents to shoot 41% from 3-point range. So I do like Grambling outright on the money line, set them as a 2-point favorite. Also made my total 138 with that outside shooting, so in on the over. 306-659, 306-660. Maryland needs to Jordan Howard has been postponed due to the weather, so we move on. 306-661, 306-662. Coppin St plays us to South Carolina State. South Carolina State, a 10.5-point road favorite. So this game is 133.5. I made this total a 127.5. I'm going to be in on the under. This is a Coppin State unit that just has not been able to get out of neutral all season long with regards to their offense. A bottom 5 team in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and a Coppin State team that last year they were actually a relatively decent defense. Currently, they have not been able to do so thus far this season in terms of being able to duplicate that defense, but still not the world's worst team, as you've got a South Carolina State team that they've been able to hold up at the point of attack with regards to their defense. They're pretty much making hockey-style line shifts at this point with regards to their overall play, and this has been a South Carolina State team that, if you look at how they've been able to play in road games, they're a top 75 unit in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've faced off against some solid teams. Like they held in there to the tune of 2 possessions against Xavier a little bit earlier in the season, albeit a banged up Xavier team, but did a solid job there. Meanwhile, this Coppin State team were around about 317th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So I did set South Carolina State more around an 11.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it with them. And with the South Carolina State team, other than Drayton Jones, you really don't have that one main headline guy. Jones is your main rim protector. He's been able to give the team north of 5 rebounds per game. He's been able to give you north of a block per contest. So I've been really liking what I've been seeing out of him. Meanwhile, on the flip side, it's the Coppin State team that they just don't have anyone that's able to give you double figures right now. They had one player that was starting to go off, starting to show a little bit of something in terms of being able to give you some good production in Darius Ward, but he's missed the last 10 games due to injury. I don't think that he's going to be back for the rest of the season. Toby Nazodi has been able to give you about 10 points. He does throw in there 2 steals per contest, and Coppin State, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, is actually an above average team with that regard, so that causes their games to be even lower scoring. But team as a whole, they're in the bottom 15 in all of college basketball in terms of 3-point shooting percentage. Got a lot of guys like Khalil Horton, Cameron Sparrow are giving you about 5 to 6 points per contest, but they have just never really been able to shine through. Julius Ellerby has been able to give you about 5.5 or so rebounds per game, but I like what I'm seeing out of Mitchell Taylor in the backcourt as well. He's been able to give the South Carolina State team a little bit north of 2.5 assists per contest, and it's a South Carolina State team that they're not amazing with their 3-point shooting percentage by any stretch of the imagination, but they're right around about country average. They're shooting about 34% from 3-point range. You've got a lot of guys that shoot in the high 30s, so it's really a whole greater than some of its parts approach with them, and right now for Coppin State, you really don't have too many parts to be able to utilize. So I did set my total of 127.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 11 with South Carolina State. 306-663, 306-664. It is Mississippi Valley State on the road against Alabama A&M. And A&M does find themselves as 16.5-point favorites. So on this game, it is 141, and with Alabama A&M, I did set them as favorites of 15 points. I think that we're starting to reach that buy point on Mississippi Valley State. I'm going to be willing to take the points. It's a Mississippi Valley State team that, by the way, they're averaging fewer than 70 points per 100 possessions right now. They are scoring 11.5 points fewer per 100 possessions than the next least efficient college basketball team in the country. You've had Arthur Tate be able to give you 10 points per contest, but for Mississippi Valley State, they're finding a little bit of something down low, as you've had Alvin Strydeck now be able to give you 10 points, 4 boards per contest. It is a unit that they shoot a little bit better than the worst team in all of college basketball from 3-point range, 26.7%, not the world's worst mark, and Donovan Sanders was in the top 75 in all of college basketball. In terms of steals per game last year, that's taken a little bit of fall off, but still 2.5 assists, 1.3 steals per contest. We're trying to be nice to Mississippi Valley State here. We're trying to do our best, as you've got an Alabama A&M team that, in terms of fouls per possession, this is one of the highest rates in all of college basketball with them. They have been able to have AC Bryant be able to throw in their 13 points, a steal and a half per contest. They shoot 42.5% from 3-point range, and like what I'm seeing out of Darius Ford as well, he comes in from TCU to be able to give the team 3.5 assists, 1.5 steals per contest. contest, but the lack of discipline has been very costly for them. Chad Moody is the only guy on the roster that gives you north of 4.1 rebounds per game, as he and AC Bryant, the only two guys that really give you north of 3.1 rebounds per game, and that's going to be an issue for Alabama A&M both in this game and moving forward. They've got one of the worst rebound rates they're going to find in all of college basketball. Obviously, Mississippi Valley State is getting blasted in pretty much every facet of basketball, but also for Mississippi Valley State, what's made their losses even more impressive is that this team is not even playing up tempo. They're outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, and yet they're getting blasted by as much as they are. Mississippi Valley State, second to last in the country with regards to rebound percentage. Alabama A&M, 335th. This Mississippi Valley State team absolutely stinks, but I just don't think that Alabama A&M should be laying quite this big of a number, even to how bad Mississippi Valley State is. And do you think that even though you're going to have a lot of fouling in this game, neither team really does a great job of throwing the ball in the bucket? Semi-total 139, I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to take the 16 plus here with Mississippi Valley State. Made them a 15-point dog, and we're going to have things up with 3 of 6, 665, 3 of 6, 666. It is Southern on the road against Prairie View. Prairie View is a 3.5-point home underdog. Total on this game, 145.5 to 146. I wrote this game up as well. I'm going to be in on the over in this spot. I set my total at a 157.5. You've got a Prairie View team that does rank in the top 55 in terms of total possessions per game, and they are in the bottom 5 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Well, this has been a Southern team that has been dealing with an injury to their main facilitator. Tujani Diamasi has been able to give this team right around about 5 assists per contest, 9 points per game, but he's been missing for the last 6 contests and not play in SWAC play a few days ago. But that said, you do have a few guys in Michael Jacobs along Jordan Johnson who have been able to combine for about 20 points. They're generating about 2.5 steals per game, and this has been a Southern team that has ranked in the top 75 with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, this is a Prairie View team that is just allowing teams to unleash from 3-point range, but they themselves have Taj Petaway along Nick Anderson supplying a combined 34.5 points per game. Petaway has been able to shoot 37.5% from 3. Prairie View as a whole, they do shoot 34.5% from 3-point range. I'm not calling Prairie View like the Monsters on offense or anything like that, but they've ascended to being a top 175 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This Prairie View team, they're going to allow a lot of second chances, a lot of third chances, what have you. As out of 364 D1 teams in terms of their rebound percentage, they are 364th, as opponents are grabbing a offensive rebound on 41.3% of their missed shots. That's going to help out a Southern team that they themselves are giving up a few too many second chances. You don't have a single player for the Southern team that's giving you north of 5.5 rebounds per game, and if you look at their defensive rebound percentage, it's right around about 284th, as they're allowing opponents to grab about 30.5% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound as well. But for this Prairie View team, they're a very complete team with Diamasi being out of the fold for Southern. I do think that Prairie View has a chance to be able to hold in there and be able to get the job done in this spot. But even with Diamasi out of the fold, I do think that with Prairie View, just the way that they're getting bludgeoned on the glass, the way that in general they have been very inconsistent with regards to that defense, that Southern does go on the road, get the job done, but I could always set my number at a 1.5. So here at the 3.5, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Prairie View, and I'm going to be writing up the over in this game as well. And that'll wrap things up for the Monday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways to be able to throw those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at G_41. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, that is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast. By that 5-star review coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, which means I'm going to be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.